The owners and operators of small shops in major centres are facing fines if they don't open their doors on Boxing Day. With Christmas Day falling on a Friday this year and the Boxing Day holiday not observed till the following Monday, most centres will open for their normal trading hours on Saturday. But at some shops, smaller retailers want to close, but they've been threatened by centre management with fines if they don't open. Scott Driscoll is the Executive Director of the Queensland Retailers Association. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Rebecca.
Why can't shop owners close on Saturday if they want to?
Look, Rebecca, it's one of those unfortunate things that, it's part of a lease, and it just really drives home the message to retailers and small business operators in general that they really, really need to be aware of what they're signing when they commit to these leases and going into these big shopping centres. They will pull them out and they will take them very seriously if that's what they choose to do.
Can they open for part of the day just to fulfil those contractual obligations?
Look, it really does come down to what that obligation in that particular centre stipulates, but mainly you would find that it would be a set of hours that they would be required to be open that they would have committed to.
What's the worry by centre management that the shopping centre won't look alive and awake? Because I'm just wondering why the bigger shops can't do what they want to do, and the smaller shops, if they want to close for the day and spend the time with their family, just go ahead and do that.
Well, look, I guess one could be cynical and say that the centres very much want to see as much time open as possible. That certainly gives them more ability to draw out more rent, more lease, income from those retailers. And I think what we've got a situation in this country now is that shopping centres, the big shopping centres that are controlled by very few in this country, are probably far more powerful than they should be, and far more powerful than a lot of people realise.
So do some of the shops pay rent based on the hours that they're open?
Well, I think you would find that most shops would pay rent based on the fact, or leases would be negotiated based on the hours that would be stipulated that the centre would be operating. And this is just something that would be negotiated up front, but certainly it would be a position of negotiation that would be utilised by those centres. And it's one that those centres drive very hard. They obviously want, they'd be happy to be open 24/7 given half a chance, because that is going to serve their bottom line interests, and certainly serve the interests of the big retail chains that have capacity to cope with this a whole lot more than smaller retailers, and it puts pressure on their smaller retail competitors.
Are there any recognised core hours across the retail industry?
There are, but they are from, you will see, particularly over this period of time at Christmas, for example, most centres are allowed to open till midnight tonight, for example, but then you will actually go from centre to centre. Shopping centre tenants can actually band together to change hours that centres open, but it's a difficult process, and it's one which requires a lot of collaboration, voting, etc. So it's not something that can be done quickly with the stroke of a pen, and as you pointed out at the outset, it is something that unfortunately a lot of retailers perhaps go into when they sign their lease. They're just keen to get in there, and they maybe haven't looked at that finer detail.
How hard is it for small business owners to keep up with the bigger shops in terms of hours leading up to Christmas when they don't have the same pool of staff to draw on?
Oh, Rebecca, it's desperately hard, and you would find a lot of smaller retailers and their families would be bearing the brunt of that right now, and what they don't want to do, if at all possible, is to let those larger competitors ride roughshod over them. If they don't open also, obviously there's the threat that people's buying habits will change and shopping patterns will change. So, this is all part of that push. I think we've, over the last year or so, started to become familiar, at least, with the Coles-Woolworths duopoly, for example, controlling 80% of the grocery market in Australia, and Australia having the highest rate of food inflation in the Western world. I mean, that's not just in food. We have this same scenario with major department stores putting pressure on their smaller independent competitors too. And at the end of the day, it's consumers that will suffer when prices are forced up, when competition's removed.
When you look back over the last couple of decades at how shopping hours have changed, I remember growing up where Sunday trading didn't exist. Saturday morning shopping was the thing that you did. You went, you got everything done by midday. These days, it seems like you can almost shop 24 hours a day. Well, you literally can online. Are we going to see shops more and more pushing for 24-hour trading, essentially?
Well, again, I think given half a chance, the major chain stores would and do, and certainly the major shopping centres do, for the reasons we've just said. That's in their commercial interest to put pressure on their smaller competition and wipe them out. But I think what the community is going to start to realise now and over the next year or so is there is a really big, obvious thing you can do about the increasing costs in the retail sector. And I think it's Economics 101. The two major costs to any retailer are their lease costs and their staff costs. Now, if you're simply not having to open across what in some cases is a ridiculous span of hours, then obviously you can cut a lot of that expenditure and those savings will flow through to consumers. And I think at the end of the day, aside from some novelty value around what we're seeing in some centres at the moment, with 33 hours straight in trade in one particular Brisbane centre, you will start to get some rationalisation or calls for rationalisation anyway moving forward.
Scott, should people be able to get from Thursday to Monday without going shopping?
Well, I think, the question is, should they be able to avoid a shopping centre or at least be organised enough to avoid a major shopping centre across that space of time? And I suppose the message I'd say to people is you can actually avoid a shopping centre across that space of time. There are plenty of independent retailers that under Queensland trading hours laws are allowed to open. If you need to do a top-up shop for groceries or the like, you can go to an IGA or a friendly grocer or a Spar, for example, and you can go in there at comparable prices and access those goods. And I suppose, this is where the arguments get blurred. The major retailers and the chains and the supermarkets don't really want people to be aware of that availability, although we've been living with it for many, many years, and perhaps sometimes we tend to forget it. It is there and an amenity we can use.
You're listening to Scott Driscoll, the Executive Director of the Queensland Retailers Association. Scott, are you concerned that small businesses won't survive with the way that shopping hours are headed?
Oh, look, I think I'm concerned not only from an industry point of view, but certainly as a consumer, I'm concerned that if there is a reduction of competition, whether that's in the food and grocery sector, whether that's in, specialty goods, electrical, you name it, if there is a reduction in competition, and anything that is designed to put pressure on driving out competition will cause that reduction over time. That's just not good for us as a society. It's not good for us as an economy.
What about with the push on for markets? I know in the southeast area of the state, Saturday and Sunday morning fresh food markets seem to be making a real comeback. Is that having an effect on smaller greengrocers and even the bigger chains?
Look, I think it's actually a positive thing. I think people need to start to actually look at changing their shopping habits, and that's in their best interest to do that. Where they might have just walked into a Coles or a Woolworths in years gone by, or even still today, and just gone and spent their entire grocery wallet or purse on that in that one particular outlet, that's what's feeding into the lack of competition. That's what's feeding into higher prices, because we need more competition. We want to see the encouragement of those independent retailers, whether they're via markets, whether they're smaller independent supermarkets. It's in the interest of the consumers that competition only gets stronger and that they're supported. And the message to consumers is break up your shopping habits. If you do go over the next few days to go and do some top-up shopping, avoid the big chain stores, go to the smaller retailers, do the top-up. You'll get in and out a whole lot quicker as well.
In those parts of the state that have Sunday trading, will the shopping centres also be open on Sunday?
Yeah, they potentially can. I mean, again, it's going to really come down to what the agreement is, but certainly on Sunday they can, and it's not throughout the whole state. I think it's important to mention that only very recently, for example, a region just outside Brisbane where Gympie and surrounding districts actually rejected the notion of Sunday trading on the very basis that, look, it's not good for consumers, it's not good for competition and small business, and that community actually said, we don't need it.
Scott, thanks for your time this afternoon.
That's a pleasure. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too. That's Scott Driscoll from the Queensland Retailers Association.